All right, so we're back and ready for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling Diddy's infamous white parties.
Yeah, these were legendary, weren't they?
Totally. The stories, the rumors, we've all heard the whispers.
And for this deep dive, we've got some incredible first-hand intel. We're talking about an account from a former Playboy bunny, Precious Muir.
Precious was actually at these parties, saw it all firsthand, and now she's revealing what really went down behind those closed doors.
It's pretty wild stuff.
It is. So the big question is, did these parties cross a line? Were they more than just lavish celebrations? That's what we're going to try to unpack today.
We're going to separate fact from fiction and get to the bottom of this whole thing. I'm ready.
Me too. Let's dive in.
All right, so first things first. We got to remember these parties were not your average celebrity bash. We're talking exclusive, invite-only events, the kind that drew the biggest names in entertainment.
Yeah, it was like the who's who of Hollywood. And for aspiring models like Precious, getting an invite to one of these parties, well, it was a dream come true, wasn't it?
Totally. It was a chance to network with powerful figures, maybe even launch their careers. I mean, it sounds pretty alluring.
It does. But that's what makes Precious's account so compelling.
Yeah.
She went in with those same aspirations, but ultimately became pretty disillusioned by what she actually saw. So paint us a picture. What were these parties really like? What made them such a huge draw, especially for someone just starting out in the industry?
Okay, imagine this. You're whisked away in a black SUV. You arrive at this sprawling mansion, and everything is decked out in white.
Wow.
Champagne is flowing everywhere, and you're surrounded by A-list celebrities. And remember, this was the early 2000s, before social media blew up. So for someone like Precious, these parties were the ultimate networking opportunity, the place to be seen, make connections, maybe land a career-making deal.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly glamorous. But I'm already sensing this element of orchestrated control, like those black SUVs, picking up young women, transporting them to these secluded locations.
Oh, absolutely.
Feels calculated, almost like a move to isolate them, don't you think?
Totally. Creates this air of exclusivity,
Right.
right? Almost like stepping into a secret society. And yeah, being separated from their usual support systems, it could definitely make these women more vulnerable, more susceptible to the pressures of that environment.
For sure. And Precious talks about these parties having these distinct phases,
Mhm.
starting with daytime socializing that progressively shifts into something much more intimate as the night wears on.
Right.
So what was it like for Precious during those early hours, like when things were still pretty tame?
Well, initially it was all about mingling, enjoying the whole luxurious atmosphere. People were relaxed, having drinks, just soaking it all in. The whole VIP experience.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
But as the day went on, things started to take a darker turn, right?
Yeah, Precious describes this noticeable shift in the atmosphere. People's inhibitions, they kind of vanish as the alcohol keeps flowing. And she starts observing things that are, well, let's just say inappropriate.
Okay, like what kinds of things?
Think like open sexual activity, drug paraphernalia left out in the open. It's a pretty wild picture she paints.
Wow. And to make matters worse, this wasn't just a party for adults. Precious mentions children being present during the daytime festivities.
Yeah, that's a bit disturbing, isn't it?
It's really concerning to me. Exposing kids to that kind of environment, that behavior, it just seems so irresponsible.
Yeah, it speaks to a normalization of behavior that a lot of people would consider, unacceptable. It's like these parties operated under a completely different set of rules.
It's almost like anything goes. And remember, Precious was just a young model trying to make it in this cutthroat industry, surrounded by all these incredibly powerful figures. It must have been super intimidating.
Oh, yeah. Imagine being in her shows, feeling all that pressure to impress, to fit in, knowing your future could hinge on making the right connections.
It's a lot to handle, almost like a pressure cooker, designed to test people's boundaries. And that makes Precious's survival instincts even more remarkable. She mentions only drinking champagne from freshly opened bottles, specifically to avoid being drugged. And she even advised her model friends to do the same. Clearly, she was aware of the potential dangers lurking beneath this glamorous facade.
She wasn't naive. She knew these parties weren't all fun and games. And this awareness becomes even more crucial as we dig into the darker side of Diddy's gatherings, those rumors that have swirled around for years.
Right, those rumors. The hidden cameras, the NDAs, the whispers of blackmail material. Did Precious witness anything that supports these claims?
She did. She was actually told about security cameras being hidden throughout the house, especially in the more private areas. And she overheard conversations about NDAs, particularly for those who participated in the more, shall we say, intense activities later in the night.
So there's some truth to those whispers.
Seems like it. Now, Precious herself didn't engage in those activities and never signed an NDA, but her observations definitely align with those long-standing rumors.
And to add fuel to the fire, we have some pretty direct quotes from Precious and Gene Deal. Precious says, Diddy's cameras were very, very hidden. I was told that there are security cameras and speak of NDAs.
And Gene Deal, who is pretty tight with Diddy's inner circle, makes an even more chilling claim. Diddy did all this to have blackmail material on the biggest names in Hollywood.
Wow. If you connect this back to Precious's experience, there's a clear pattern emerging here. As the night progressed, the pressure, the manipulation, it all intensified. Almost like the party was designed to steer guests towards this NDA phase, where things get a lot more complicated.
Yeah, there's definitely a calculated element to it. It goes beyond just throwing a wild party. If these allegations are true, it raises some serious questions about Diddy's motives. Was this all just a game of power and control?
Exactly. And that brings us to another key question. If all this was happening, why did so many people stay silent for so long?
Well, that's what we'll be unpacking next. Precious's story shines a light on this whole culture of silence, this complicity that allowed these behaviors to continue unchecked for years, and it's a story that's about to get even more revealing. You know what strikes me about Precious's story? It's her honesty about why she stayed silent. It wasn't just fear of repercussions, though that was definitely a factor.
Right.
But she also talks about this intense pressure to conform, this unspoken expectation that you don't rock the boat, especially when you're a young woman trying to make it in a notoriously tough industry.
Yeah, I get that. It's like this age-old dilemma, isn't it? You're drawn to these events for the opportunities they might offer, but then you find yourself kind of trapped in this system that feels almost impossible to escape.
Exactly. And Precious's experience, I think, points to a much bigger issue within the entertainment industry as a whole. It's like this culture of silence, this power imbalance. It just creates a system where aspiring talent, especially young women, become incredibly vulnerable to exploitation.
And the fact that Precious describes this behavior as being like so normalized within the industry, well, that makes it even more insidious.
Oh, absolutely.
If everyone's participating or simply looking the other way, it just perpetuates this culture of complicity, right? Makes it so much harder to break free.
It really does. And the more we dig into this story, the more we see that it's not just about one individual or one set of parties.
Yeah.
We're talking about a systemic problem here, a deeply ingrained power imbalance that allows those in positions of authority to just take advantage of those who are trying to break into the industry.
It's a tough reality to face. And it's important to remember that all of this was happening, before the #MeToo movement gained momentum.
Right.
Back then, there was far less awareness of these issues and definitely fewer platforms for victims to actually come forward and share their stories.
Absolutely. The landscape was totally different. I mean, imagine the courage it would have taken to speak out against someone as powerful as Diddy back then. It could have been career suicide.
It's hard to even fathom. And that brings us to some, well, troubling ethical implications here.
Yeah.
We're talking about the potential for powerful figures to use, payouts to silence victims.
Hush money.
Exactly. Preventing any real accountability.
Yeah.
And basically allowing this cycle of abuse to just continue.
It's the classic scenario. Wealth and influence being used to cover up wrongdoing and protect reputations. Precious actually expresses her frustration with this. The idea that some celebrities can just buy their way out of these situations, erase their actions, and silence those who might come forward.
It's messed up. It becomes this twisted game where justice takes a backseat to money and power.
Exactly. And if these allegations are true and those involved are able to just pay off their accusers, well, it sends a really dangerous message.
Yeah, like wealth and influence can shield you from consequences.
No accountability.
So where does that leave us? Are we as consumers of entertainment somehow complicit in this system?
Ooh, good question.
If we're aware of these kinds of behaviors, do we have a responsibility to demand better, to hold those in power accountable?
That's a question each of you listening will have to grapple with, but I think it starts with acknowledging the issue, recognizing that our entertainment choices do have real-world consequences.
I think you're right. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about who else might be entangled in all of this. Precious mentioned seeing high-level industry executives at these parties People with even more power and influence than Diddy himself.
Oh, yeah, she definitely does. And there have been hints from other celebrities who have spoken about their own experiences with Diddy. Ashton Kutcher, for instance. He's alluded to having this bizarre relationship with Diddy stemming from a confrontation over a prank.
Right.
Now, he's been pretty vague about the specifics, but his comments definitely suggest their interactions were far from ordinary.
And then there's Kelly Ripa, who casually mentioned being on Diddy's yacht and seemed pretty eager to attend one of his white parties.
It's interesting, right? Like, it gives us a little glimpse into the circles Diddy was moving in, how casually these events were just discussed among A-list celebrities.
So it's like it was no big deal.
Yeah, just another day in Hollywood. But perhaps the most revealing account comes from Usher.
Oh, yeah, Usher.
He actually lived with Diddy for a year back in the 90s when he was just a teenager. He describes Diddy's place as being filled with chicks and witnessed a lifestyle he couldn't fully grasp at the time.
It's like he was thrown into the deep end.
Totally. And what's interesting is he doesn't outright condemn Diddy's behavior. He seems more amused than outraged, which I think speaks volumes about how normalized this lifestyle was within certain circles.
It's almost like he saw it as a rite of passage, a glimpse into the excess and indulgence that comes with fame and fortune.
Exactly. And that adds another layer of complexity to this whole story. Were these other celebrities simply bystanders, just passively observing Diddy's behavior? Or were they active participants, complicit in what was happening?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we may never have a definitive answer to.
Probably not. But the fact that we're even asking these questions, that we're actually examining the complicity and silence that allowed these behaviors to flourish, well, I think that's a step in the right direction.
It's a start, for sure. It reminds us that we can't just accept the narratives that are presented to us. We have to dig deeper, question assumptions, and hold those in power accountable.
You got it. And that's what this deep dive is all about. It's about giving you, the listener, the information and insights you need to form your own conclusions. So let's wrap things up by taking a closer look at the bigger picture. What does Precious's story really tell us about the entertainment industry as a whole?
Okay, so we've heard Precious Muir's firsthand account. We've explored these allegations of hidden cameras and NDAs, and even touched on the potential involvement of other A-list celebrities. It's been a wild ride.
It has. And you know what I think makes Precious's story so powerful? It's that statement she makes about Diddy, how he didn't create this behavior, but rather learned it from someone else.
Yeah, that really makes you think.
It does, because it suggests that this whole pattern of exploitation and abuse, well, it runs much deeper than any one individual. It's like a systemic issue that's been perpetuated for generations. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the entertainment we consume really built on this foundation of exploitation, as Precious suggests?
It's a tough question to confront. But if this behavior is as widespread as Precious claims, then we as consumers have to ask ourselves, what's our role in all of this?
Right.
Do we have a responsibility to demand better, to hold those in power accountable? I mean, these are tough questions.
They are, but they're questions we can't afford to ignore. If we really want to see change, we have to start by acknowledging the problem, having these uncomfortable conversations.
Absolutely. Turning a blind eye won't make it go away.
Right.
We have to be aware of this potential for abuse, support those who come forward, and push for a safer, more ethical industry.
Couldn't agree more. And what about the aspiring talent? Those young people just starting out eager to make their mark. How do we protect them from falling victim to these predatory behaviors?
That's the key, right? We need to empower them, give them the knowledge and awareness to navigate this industry safely.
Exactly. They need to understand their rights, recognize those red flags, and feel empowered to speak out against any form of exploitation.
It's about creating a culture where they don't have to choose between their dreams and their safety.
You got it. Zero tolerance for harassment and abuse. And those who are found guilty of these actions, they need to face real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist or a financial settlement that silences the victims.
I couldn't agree more. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been challenging, but definitely a crucial conversation. Precious Muir's story and the broader issues it raises serve as a stark reminder that the entertainment industry, for all its glamour and allure, can also be a pretty dark and dangerous place.
No doubt about it. But remember, knowledge is power. By understanding the complexities, recognizing those patterns of abuse and complicity, we can all play a role in creating a safer and more equitable industry for everyone.
So, as you go about your day, think about what we've discussed. Challenge the status quo, support those who speak out, and use your voice to demand change. The entertainment industry and the world as a whole will be better for it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for diving deep with us.